Kris is suicidal. With a beyond low self-esteem, they believe nobody would care if they were gone. Maybe Azriel would, but Azriel's in college, moving on. Kris is left alone with Toriel. With her toxically positive persona and the way she avoids directly addressing issues, Kris feels Toriel just doesn't understand them at all. They're the only human in town. To the monsters, they're seen as the creepy, shut-in, antisocial kid they don't understand. And Kris is very much autistic, too, in my own autistic opinion. It all adds these feelings of isolation, depression, and worthlessness. They take their knife and break into the bunker. The bunker hides a decrepit square staircase in a shaft that goes very, very, very deep underground. Their plan is to travel all the way to the bottom to take their own life with the knife, killing themselves in the deepest, most far-reaching point of this abandoned, off-limits bunker just felt right. Because of their belief in the occult, Kris used to be very scared of this bunker and the superstitions that surrounded it. But in that moment of very dark headspace that led them there, that did not matter anymore. It may have even given it its own morbid thrill. Kris walks down these stairs for more than an hour, possibly hours, wanting to reach the very bottom. Once at an incredible depth underground, Kris discovers there's a leak. At this depth, water from the deep ocean has eroded a crack in the wall and flooded the rest of the shaft below it. After hours of descent, thanks to this flood, Kris can walk no deeper. They decide they're going to plunge into the water and let it pull them as deep as it can before finally using their knife to finish themselves off. So Kris jumps in and lets themselves sink. Right as everything is fading to black, and Kris is about to use their knife, that's when they hear a mysterious song. It sounds sad, and yet the playing is familiar. It is a song on a guitar, and it is played by December Holiday, who is trapped in the depths where Kris was now sinking. December Holiday selflessly saves Kris's life, possibly even giving up the opportunity to take Kris's soul and use it to escape the depths herself. I don't know what kind of form Des has, whether it be somewhat physical or entirely ethereal. Either way, she is trapped, confused, and in great pain, yet she uses what power she still has to save Kris, stopping the knife from harming them and pushing them back towards the water where they jumped in. Kris is changed. They believed that nobody would care if they commit suicide, yet Kris is overwhelmed with the feeling that their childhood friendship, their adventures together, must have meant so much to her. Des's selfless act changes everything. But this is not the end. As right as Kris is about to be pushed out of the depths, a strange man appears in the shadow of their mind. Time and space seem to warp to hold Kris in the depths just a little longer, and the strange man, or rather, a piece of him, begins speaking to Kris. This strange man is Dr. W.D. Gaster. He is a man who can operate across multiple universes, as he was shattered across time and space. And what is a universe if not a point across the endless array of time and space where such values are defined? He offers Kris a deal. Gaster would show Kris a way to find and save Des, provide them with existential and forbidden knowledge about the nature of the world they live in, and show them a look at their fate, all in exchange for their soul. Gaster needs a soul for his Deltarune experiment. He wants to see if he can connect a being from another universe to the Deltarune universe using the determination of the soul as an anchor for the connection. This being Gaster plans to connect is us, the player, and once connected he plans to give the soul to the player's vessel. But even a being such as he cannot create a soul from nothing, so he is bargaining for one from Kris. Kris agrees, their soul, in exchange for being able to save Des. The man fades away, and then Kris is suddenly thrust into many intense visions. Gaster shows them their fate. In order to find and save Des, their fate is to become the roaring night and open dark fountains, allowing the player to go on fantastical adventures and make many friends along the way. One of them being Susie, a student they always admired and sympathized with even as she was their bully. What Kris sees is not necessarily a whole and exact future, but rather a series of more major fated events, as well as a glimpse into alternate ways to perceive their own reality, which suggest some very unsettling truths. This is what Jebel, Spamton, and other characters who met Gaster see that makes them know more than they should. Kris sees what Gaster plans to do with his experiments on their soul after the exchange. And one of the events they see for the future is the player's creation of a vessel and it being given their soul, and when this event would happen. When they wake up from their visions, Kris finds themselves on a stair a mere inch above the waterline, breathing heavily, their knife laying beside them. After some time coughing water out of their lungs and catching their breath once more, they take the knife and travel all the way back up the staircase, leaving the bunker. Their body still holds their soul for now, but they are no longer in ownership of it, and they know that when the time comes, it will be taken right from them. And on top of all of it, from their exposure to the depths, their soul has now established a connection with the supernatural force known as darkness. Remembering their studies of the occult with Caddy, Kris remembers rumors of the existence of darkness. Not darkness as in the absence of light, but instead as a supernatural force that sucks out light and casts a shadow where reality and dream meet. They remembered studying a spell that would supposedly cast yourself into a dimension flooded with darkness darker than dark. But the only way the spell can work is if your soul has already established a connection with darkness. Gaster's visions revealed many things, but the existence of this spell was not one of them. It was withheld. Recognizing their soul had established a connection with the darkness, Kris starts formulating a plan. Amidst everything awful about the truth of their situation revealed, their plan was the one thing that gave Kris a tiny sliver of hope for their soul. When Gaster takes their soul, they would take the soul back. Using the knowledge of the fated event foretold, they would cast the spell at just the right time and space. It sounded ridiculous. If Kris took it back, what would stop Gaster from just taking it back again? And they knew that with the player connected, they would have little control of their own body anyway. It seemed like a plan destined to be fruitless. But what other source of hope did Kris have? And maybe, if this plan did work, could they go on adventures with Susie? And with help from the player, make friends like they've never had in years? So they planned. They practiced ripping out their soul, using occult knowledge also not revealed in Gaster's visions to do so. They set up the birdcage in their room and practiced their soul-throwing skills. Kris didn't feel quote-unquote duped after the exchange when the realization sank in what Gaster was going to do to their soul. Being able to do anything he wanted with it was clearly part of the deal, but Kris still felt angry and scared about what Gaster was willing to do to it. Kris waits for the right time and place to cast the spell, and, right before it connects with the vessel, takes the soul back. For Gaster, this was a shock. Of all his brilliant calculations, he did not predict this as a possibility. That the same kid who entered the bunker with suicidal intent had now displayed the incredible willpower to take the soul back using knowledge of an obscure spell he never revealed to them. That he, a true genius operating across different points in time and space, did not predict this possibility made this result just so very, very interesting. Gaster's scientific curiosity is enveloped with an incredible fascination over this result, and so he takes a back seat and watches to see how everything will play out, documenting his many observations along the way as any good scientist does. Kris's soul is back in their own body, but they now have little control given the player's connection to the soul. This is why they knew to practice ripping the soul out and plan ways to trap it. Now, the very same blade Kris took into the bunker to end their own life becomes their instrument to find and save Des. Kris begins opening the dark fountains. In the story, as Gaster foretold, Des would be saved, and the roaring Kris needed to bring about to free her from the depths would be banished. So Kris does their best to accommodate for the difference in protagonist and keep the story on track. Kris instills in their creation, Ralsei, made from the combination of the green crayon and Kris's red headband, a strong desire to keep the script on track, as they are unable to do so themselves while being controlled. With each adventure, Kris makes more friends. With each dark fountain sealed, the more they and their friends become literally stronger stats-wise. The adventures created by the dark fountains inspire character growth and self-realization for so many who experience them. These adventures in the dark worlds lead the characters to become stronger in every way. Opening the fountains at a rate of once a day, Kris and their friends can keep going on adventures. And after many adventures, when Kris feels everybody is strong enough to take on the consequences, and the time is right, Kris will begin opening many dark fountains to cut through many layers of darkness, creating dark worlds within dark worlds, within dark worlds, within dark worlds, within dark worlds, until they cut an opening all the way through to the depths, where they must find Des once more and bring her back out. But of course, this is just how Kris wants it to go. Because remember, rarely in stories does everything play out as smoothly as the main characters want them to. Kris may be having adventures and making friends right now, but there's always a few grim reminders peeking around the corner of what will happen to Kris if the connection is ever cut.